Supreme Court ruling, an extraordinary caucus meeting be convened to discuss the proposals of the bill. 3, and finally, that the extraordinary caucus meeting will also discuss the national budget priorities for the financial year 2025-2026. So in a nutshell, that is the resolution of the NRM Parliamentary Caucus pursuant to the Supreme Court ruling on the General Court-Martial, established formally under the UPDF Act. We can move to...
It's been clear, so I don't expect questions.
Yes.
Some timelines, whether you have set the sort of timelines, and remind us the bill being resolved was attending to our questions. Which areas we have been actually getting to
Time frame. Areas for attention. Yes.
Yes, sir. May I have two questions? Arthur, I write for the Daily Monitor. The questions around the areas you talked about. What informed the withdrawal of the bill, first of all? And then the second question is around the budget priority areas. When at a time when government is trying to formulate what is going to shape the next budget, but also if observed very well, there's been a persistent call for attention on what the US president effected in his executive order. There were repetitive calls on the floor and in the committee, budget committee, what is government doing, what is government doing. At the last time we heard from the minister, the Honorable Golobi indicated that cabinet would at some point have time to discuss that. So I would like to know if that is one of the areas that they are looking at in the budget priorities. Are they looking at to plug the gap that is being occasioned by the freeze on the foreign aid funding? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Vincent. Question. First one, there are concerns about utterances by your chairperson, your party chairperson, who happens to be the president, and the CDF in the same context of the UPDF mandate in the GCM. Some critics are saying this is your utterances, your leaders' utterances, are a vote of no confidence in the country's jurisprudential.
What was it? I may not be privy.
While your CDF says it was some...
No, it is our. You're Ugandan.
Of the country, it's not of NRM.
He is the Chief of Defense Forces of the Republic of Uganda, not of the NRM.
Thank you. I'll quote you verbatim.
Yes.
The Chief of Defense Forces, General says, was surprised and he was shocked at the ruling of the Supreme Court ruling, and that would be okay in the eyes of many critics, but they're saying him going forward to reject the ruling of the Supreme Court, the word Supreme in the context, is a vote of no confidence in the country's judicial systems. What's your take on this as a person who really is part of the government that says it's following the rule of law?
My take is the position of the NRM caucus.
Second is about his other comment when he said that as we head to the 2026 general elections, he's activating the involvement of military intelligence. Yet we are looking at demilitarizing elections. Have you also put up some brigade to undertake elections as part of your NRM government line?
Could we first deal with this? Timeline or the time frame, we did not give the Office of the Attorney General any specific time frame or timeline. But in the knowledge of the Attorney General, this matter is urgent, and we expect it to be handled as soon as possible. On the issue of the areas of attention, the areas of attention is derived majorly from the decision of the Supreme Court, the question of appointing lawyers in the UPDF to preside over that court, the issue of clarifying on what constitutes a service offense and a penal offense. The other one is security of tenure of those who will be appointed, the manner of appointment, separating disciplinary units of the court-martial from the judicial system, I believe those are majorly some of the areas, but also clarifying on what constitutes the monopoly of the Army, in this case the UPDF, among other areas that court ruled on. So if you're asking what were the areas of the attention, those are specifically some of the areas of attention. Because the Supreme Court is saying if you're appointing, definitely in the UPDF, there are enrolled advocates, enrolled under the Advocates Act with different ranks. So definitely the Supreme Court was also saying, why don't we, instead of having a senior person in service without a legal background, there are those enrolled. Whether serving in the military or outside the military, an advocate is an advocate. All of them have gone through the same law school. All of them went for the diploma in legal practice, and after that enrolled as practicing advocates in the High Court and other court subordinate. So those are the areas for attention. What informed the withdrawal? First of all, the UPDF amendment bill before Parliament was meant to handle other aspects, which I may not now remember. But since the Supreme Court also came up with this ruling, more or less at the same time, instead of us proceeding to only handle the amendment before the Supreme Court ruling, we are now saying this is the same law. Either than proceeding to amend, why don't we just do a withdrawal, have a comprehensive consideration in terms of drafting it to cover the areas where a court has made a decision, and we bring it back to Parliament. So that is what informed the withdrawal. The UPDF Amendment Act, as of now, was not touching on anything to do with the court-martial. It was touching on other aspects. But now that there is this major decision of the highest court of the land, we are now saying we can pause a bit, have it withdrawn. The Attorney General Chambers can have a comprehensive look and review of what court decided. Then they do further drafting to fit within the ruling of the Supreme Court. So that is what informed the withdrawal, not another thing. We don't want to pass the amendment bill, then again it is assented to, then the next day we again come back to amend the same law. You would rather have it withdrawn and you incorporate the decision of the Supreme Court that came after the bill was introduced. I hope that is understood. On the question of foreign aid, I think this will be discussed at an appropriate time, probably also in the budget proposals and priority for the next financial year, in order for us to know where we shall compensate for the funding that we have been receiving, especially on the issue of drugs, majorly drugs. That will definitely be part of that discussion. Because as of now, there is already a mischief that we must cure. Utterances, for me, I am on the mandate to communicate the position of the NRM Parliamentary Caucus, which is the legislative organ of the national resistance movement in Parliament. What I am communicating is the position agreed by the caucus that sat today. Not yesterday, but one. But today, the day of our Lord, 7th of February 2025. So that is the position of the legislative organ of NRM in the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda, a body charged with the constitutional mandate of making laws. And also we must agree that courts of judicature interpret the laws we make. If they have done their part, the ball is now in our court to also do our part. And that is our humble duty. I am not privy to any utterances and what have you. My mandate is limited to the NRM Parliamentary Caucus, and that is our position which I have signed, and I will circulate it.
Now, Chief, for clarity, you seem to be cherry-picking the recommendations.
Let me state, you see, I give you normally the resolution, but let me state that the Supreme Court of the Republic of Uganda did not say release those under trial in the military court-martial immediately. No. It is said transfer them to the civilian court. And the transfer legally is also a process. In fact, that is a question that should be posed to the lawyers because it is incumbent upon them to extract a ruling of court and serve to the parties that should affect the decision of court. So the Supreme Court never said release them immediately.
It meant so.
No, unless you quote it. You quote it for me.
When they say, because
You know, it is a question of opinion and interpretation.
but government chief,
What I am saying is the Supreme Court in its ruling stated transfer them, those who are currently under trial, to the civilian court. The Supreme Court never stated release them immediately. Those are two different things in law. The process of transfer
It takes a while.
is also there.
in which law, it is provided in which law? The transfer of cases from military court to civilian, it is in which law?
But I'm saying that is what the Supreme Court of the Republic of Uganda ruled. It did not rule that release them immediately. It ruled that transfer those currently under trial in the military court-martial to the civilian court. And we are saying the transfer process is also a process. Or transfer is a process.
Guided by which law?
You can also quote the law that says it is immediate. Yeah.
So for you, you are thinking that the next day. Eh, my friend.
Under which law?
There are
Under which
processes.
law?
The person who arrested them did it illegally. So there's no reason to keep them there.
There is nothing like an illegality. At the point they were arrested when the provisions in the UPDF Act were in operation. It is until court ruled against or outlawed them. But even when that is done, there is a process.
But the Constitutional Court has pronounced to say the correct. That was just
The Constitutional Court is a lower court. The Supreme Court is the highest court of the land.
Okay, where government chief whip, Joseph from BBS, where does the resolution that you have reached on, where does this leave Dr. Kiza Besigye and the other NRM prisoners who are taken to prison on the 18th of the court martial? And secondary, we all know that the Parliamentary Defense Committee has been handling this amendment, the UPDF Act, to recognize SSG. Are you dropping this to consider the Supreme Court ruling?
What are we dropping?
Court ruling?
You had the
We are not saying that the withdrawal of the UPDF amendment bill is meant for us to drop any of the provisions in terms of proposals that were contained therein. The withdrawal is now to have a consolidated package pursuant to the Supreme Court ruling on the court-martial. In a nutshell, the proposals that were there will stay. We shall now add what the Supreme Court has ruled on the question of the court-martial. One is asking where does it leave. I don't want to really take this matter. First of all, the case did not end in the Supreme Court because of the arrest of the individual we are mentioning. I have stated in clear terms that the Supreme Court ruled that transfer the trials to the civilian court. The Supreme Court did not rule that release them or release him with immediate effect. There are questions you are asking here that should be posed to the lawyers who are in court, that what have you done ever since court ruled? Absolutely. You are really posing good questions, but to a wrong person to answer. Those questions must be taken to them. What have you so far done from the time the Supreme Court ruled A, B, C, D? For us, we are telling you ours is a legislative organ of the party. We are looking at now the way forward. What is the way forward? The Supreme Court has ruled. As a legislative organ of the party, we respect the Supreme Court of the land. And we are saying, pursuant to their ruling, this is how we intend to proceed, guided by the areas they have ruled on. 1, 2, 3, 4, like I've mentioned, among others.
It's like you're trying to legalize court-martial. You feel that
Let's cross the bridge when we get there. Sooner or later, there will be an extraordinary caucus meeting. We shall again come back and tell you if you want to hear the proposals one by one. We shall read them to you. Then you will form an opinion at the right time. Let's cross the bridge when we get there.
Thank you so much.
There will be no overhaul. As you are all aware, budgeting is also a process termed as a cycle. In fact, the budgeting of the next financial year starts immediately. A new financial year also starts. It is a cycle. We have passed the budget framework paper, which I would say provides more of the basics. We are now moving to the ministerial policy statement before the final budget of the country is approved through an appropriation process. It is a process. In going through the processes of the budget, we fine-tune. We may find that we have allocated this to the national security and peace of the country. When the caucus sits and they say, no, this looks lower, why don't we? So where do we get it from? There is the question of funding under HIV/AIDS arising from the decision of the new president of the US. We need to consider all that. So the budget framework paper is not something that can't change. It can change. Even at the last minute as we are appropriating, you normally hear of a corrigenda. There are aspects that came through a corrigenda. The Akibwa Stadium for AFCON 2027 came through a corrigenda. Recently, there was the laying of the foundation. So the budget process is not cast in stone. That there are things that are meant to be varied for the betterment of the people of Uganda. If we are done, then we are done.
Kagoba President Entebbe tukkirizaganyizza nga tumaze okuwulira ebyo ebibadde oba ensala eyava mu kkooti ensukkulumu ne tukkirizaganya nti Ssaabawolereza wa gavumenti aggyeyo ebbago eryo erya UPDF eririyo alikomyewo mu buto asobole olikolamu okulirongosaamu n'okwongeramu ebintu ebirala. Era ne tukkirizaganya nti tujja kubaayo n'olukiiko olw'enjawulo okutunuulira ensonga ezo nnyingo ku nnyingo, awo nno tulabe bwe tusobola okutegeka ebbago eryo tulikomye mu paalamenti lifuukemu etteeka. Era ekirala nti tubadde tutunuulirako mu ngeri y'okusosowaza nti tuteekawa ensimbi okulabika nga programs zaffe nga gavumenti ya NRM okutambuza abantu tuteeka ensimbi awo awasinga okukwatira abantu mu bimpimpi byebyo bye tutuuseeko olunaku olwaleero.
Done. Yeah, done.
The summary.
Yeah, summarized very well.
If you need in Madi,